Hi guys, so this is Rhianna with my week 4 video, and this week all of our stuff was on planning and preparation for disaster, so I figured that emergency planning was a very important word, and I would describe it as proactive attempts to be prepared for an immediate emergency situation based on where they live geographically and natural hazards they're most prone to, which they would need to prepare for. So I really enjoyed the readings for this week. The first one being about how children should be seen more than just passive victims, that they have an active role in like preparing for disaster and like being a resource like to come back from this disaster. I thought it was really interesting because I do think that children are a powerful asset because of the school system and how that's a really easy way to educate these kids on what to do in wake of disaster and like what they can do to help and stuff like that. And in the second article, I thought that was really interesting in how it talked about like what could happen if like anthrax like got like a terrorist attack, and I thought it was really interesting because I'm taking an anthropology class right now. It's called Collapse of Civilization, and like we talk about this all the time, and we talk about like how if disaster was to strike, that people would just go crazy and people in the city would be the ones to die first because they can't grow their own food there. So they would all come out here to Lancaster or like go up north and try to find food and like find all this like stuff just for basic human survival that they need. And I find it really interesting that in this class we're talking about disaster too, and actually in a lot of my classes we are focusing on disaster right now, so like it all kind of comes back to this class, and I think that that just really reinforces what I learn in this class. But yeah, that article was really interesting, and how it talked about how there would be so much of a lack of communication because everyone's trying to reach everyone else, and the gridlocks and the evacuation and all of that kind of stuff is just crazy to me because I can't even think about how it would be if everyone tried to evacuate at the same time. And with our small highways in like Pennsylvania, it would be virtually impossible. So in the readings there was talk about nursing homes and hospitals in the wake of this disaster, and I never really put much thought into like thinking about hospitals and how there are all of those people in the hospital that need help, and then if disaster would strike and say the power goes out, like what happens to those people? And same with nursing homes, like all these old people that have like dementia and stuff, and a disaster strikes and it's like crazy in a nursing home, like what happens? Like how do people like deal with that? I just thought that was really interesting to think about. So my muddiest point was somewhere in the readings it said that officials can withhold information from the public based on their fear of the public having an outright panic. And I just don't understand how elected officials can withhold that information from the public just because they're scared of a reaction when the public has the very right to know what's going on and what's going to happen. And yeah, so I just didn't really understand how morally and ethically they can withhold this information. So my question for the class would be, if you had $1 million, how would you prepare for a disaster? Would you maybe build a bomb shelter and stock it with food and everything you could possibly need? Or maybe you could buy an airplane to leave wherever the disaster is? So whatever you could do with $1 million in wake of disaster.